smells wonderful. And this is the first press load of the year. It's 2021 Quail Hurst Estate, clone 667. So Quail Hurst is a vineyard that I've dealt with since 2003. It's in the Chehalem Mountain AVA, sub-AVA of the Willamette Valley, and it's a spectacular vineyard that's east facing about 500 feet overlooking the Willamette Valley. So you can see 5 mountains from there. It's a beautiful place, all jory soil, volcanic red soil, high in iron. And this vineyard, the reason I'm dealing with it is, or I'm working with it over and above fruit from my estate, is because I've got a label called Old Friends. And Old Friends is reminiscent of old friends that I've dealt with, old vineyards that I've dealt with. So those vineyards are my friends. The clones in particular that might be coming from that vineyard that are special and unique, and like I'm first winemaker in Oregon to make clone 4407 from Arlen Vineyard. That's under the Old Friends Vineyard designate within Iterum Wines. It'll be released fairly soon. So 2021 Quail Hurst Estate 667. The wine that's coming out there will get pumped into this tank right here. You can see it's a very small amount. We're not making large quantities on anything. The next press load of 3 today will be the Wadensville, and then the third one will be 777. And this is really gratifying because having dealt with this vineyard, with the original owner, he sold it. I worked and made wine at Dobbes Family Estate for the new owner, and actually then helped them develop the balance of the vineyard, working with Sterling Fox, an old buddy of mine that I worked with at Willamette Valley Vineyards years ago. And so between he and I, we put together the plant program, or the planting program, to maximize all the plantable acreage there. In Wadensville and 667 are 2 of those clones that I suggested we put in. So this is the first Wadensville I've been able to work with from the vineyard. 667 we got last year. And what Joey's doing right now is getting ready to pump the wine into the 667 right there. So what he did is he turned the pump on out of the juice pan here, the wine pan, so to speak, and got the air out of it, and we're going right over the top of the tank, so we aren't blowing a bunch of air through it. Let's do it. I do it like that. There we go. You can see this, what's in here right now is the free run wine, meaning the wine that was pumped out of the small fermenter. These being dumped into the top. Lighten the load, also diminish the amount of danger if something were to fall or break. And so what we're doing right now is pumping out the very beginning of the light pressing into this tank right here. At this point in the game, we don't worry too much about oxidation, and just because it's still slightly fermenting, it's completely full of yeast, and the yeast are reductive versus oxidative. It's fully protected. So what I'm going to do now is increase the pressure on this again because it's slowing down. Safety button?
Yep, and then you just hit, yep.
There we go. Wow, I remembered. Okay. Put my glasses on because I'm getting old. And there we go. I did it right. So I've got the very expensive, take the glasses off because my obedience mask is fogging them up. Now I'm going to take the damn thing off. And what I do is I taste. And that's why I like to do this manually instead of just doing it automatically, as I have pinpoint control, and if I get busy doing something, gotta go grab a phone call or whatever, I can just shut it off and not worry about it over pressing. So a lot of winemakers will do what's called press cuts. So that means earlier pressings at lighter pressures have less tannins. The more you press it, the more tannin, the more structure the wine has. Years ago, I used to separate the lighter pressings from the heavier pressings and always put them back together because it made the best wine. So now I just pay attention to it and I do one pressing and it's all together. Oh, you're going to give me a real, okay, cool. We're going for the high end.
Yeah. Making it sexy, you know.
Thank you.
Sex sells, right?
We didn't waste a drop and pour it right back in. So you can see it's taken quite a while before it's going to start raining a fair amount of wine, just because that membrane has to travel all the way down. There's only like 0.8 tons in here, and this will hold at least 8 tons worth of grape pomace, skins and seeds and stems. Point 0.9? Thanks. So I've stopped it at 1.6 bar, BAR, which is 15 PSI per bar. So it's just a means of, like when you fill your car tire, how many PSI, how much pressure do I have in there? So it's really interesting. The harder we press this, then towards the end, the must in there, so that's the skins, the seeds, sometimes the stems, actually filter the wine. So if you were to look at what's coming out of here, you can see that's pretty clear. You can see right through it. I mean, there's not very much in there, right? But if you look at what came out of here earlier and put the same amount of wine in there, look how milky that is. So it's actually almost kind of self-filtering. I mean, it all gets mixed together. It's just something interesting to point out. So what I did is I stopped the press so I could yak and now taste. Getting a little bit of tannin, a little more tannin than what ran out before. And it can kind of fool you here too, because you'll have some grape berries in there that are not fully fermented. So when we destem the fruit, we aren't crushing and mashing. We have mostly whole berry component in there. So when you press out, there's always a little bit of sugar that's liberated. So if you might measure the residual sugar or the sugar in the fermenter, and it's, 0.5 or something like that. After you press out, generally it's a little higher, but it continues to ferment after it's pressed out, and then it sits here in the tank for 24 to 48 hours. It'll settle out the heavier lees, the sediment, yeast solids, pectins, mucilages, ladybugs, things like that made it in the fermenter. And we'll end up with, this is the drain valve for obvious reason. You open it, it drains. And this is what's called the racking valve. So we'll have a certain percent of the solids below this, and so we'll pump the wine out, pull some light, fluffy lees. Those are like the mother's milk. The yeast lees are like a preservative for the wine. They add richness and volume, and there's something called autolysis where the yeast cells break down. So if you method champagne or true sparkling wine, they'll leave it on the yeast lees for a long time, and you get that autolysis and adds richness and body to the wine. So that's part of what we want to happen during the aging process. So kind of jumping ahead there, but I'm going to increase the pressure on this a little bit. There's not a lot coming out because there ain't a lot in there. It's a small lot. LOT. So we use the word lot, LOT, for, what's the other word? A cuvee, a piece, like a fermenter. So you got 1 lot, 2 lot, 3 lot, different clones that are fermented separately, so that constitutes a separate lot. Getting a little bit more tannic. You go a little bit further and call it good. So one thing that I keep track of is the amount of harder pressed wine that's got more tannin in it. Those are the antioxidants. Tannins are antioxidants. It's an incrementally small, or percentage-wise, it's a very, very small amount of harder press that goes into the free run and the lighter pressings of the wine. So it's not like if you get something that's really tannic that's coming out of there and you've got a couple liters of it, it's going to ruin the wine or compromise the wine. If you're on top of it, you know what you're doing, it actually makes the wine better because you want some of that structure and some of that tannin in there. As I said, over the years, I would keep it all separate and then end up adding back the harder press to the lighter pressings because it made the best wine. So there's almost nothing coming out of there now. We're just going to let it go a little higher, let it drip, and call it good.